All right. As I think most of you know, we began in 2008 a practice of having an IB graduate introduce the keynote speaker. I'm particularly enthusiastic when that graduate has actually had a life after the IB. It's always refreshing to hear the enthusiasm and passion of a college fresh person or an NYP graduate, but when somebody's been out in the world as a political activist and has put what he has learned from the IB into action, I think it's particularly meaningful. Please welcome Tyler Deaton.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here in New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm a native of Birmingham, Alabama, where I graduated in 2004 from the Jefferson County International Baccalaureate High School. My IB experience was far and away my best education experience, going all the way from kindergarten through college. It challenged me, and it shaped me into who I am today in a tremendously positive way, and I think a big part of that is because my experience in IB, that program took an educational approach that treated me as a young person, even still while I was young. It treated me as a serious person, as a person with some free will, as a young person who had the ability to actually make some decisions for my own life. The year after I graduated, I'm proud to say that my high school topped the list of Newsweek magazine's best high schools in America. Now, not just to brag about my own class, though. That same year, I went back and looked. 7 of the top 10 schools that year were all participants in the IB program. So I think that's worth some applause. I've lived through the benefits of the curriculum. I've watched my former classmates all excel in college and in their careers, and I've seen their advantages over their peers who didn't have a chance to go through the IB experience. And I think that that's one of the unfortunate facts about IB is that not enough students to this day are offered the opportunity to receive an IB education, and not enough decision makers recognize the value of IB for all students. And so that's one of the great things to hear about Costa Rica. Yesterday we heard about Ecuador and Chicago, and that kind of expansion is just wonderful to hear, and I think that's worth another round of applause. So in the booklet, you'll see my biography, and it calls me a lobbyist. Paul called me a political activist. Lobbyist is kind of a dirty word, I get it. I'd rather style myself as maybe more of a rabble-rouser. If I'm talking about myself, maybe I'd say a problem solver. I'm sure people who disagree with me have different words. Just whatever you do, don't call me a politician. That is insulting. I can't imagine. But in my adopted home state now of New Hampshire, I work on a variety of issues, a lot of the public policy basics, things like healthcare, transportation, energy, education. But I've also pursued a lot of work in the area of human rights. I took on a big project to stop a growing and disturbing assault on the rights of international refugees who've come to America, and that's been a growing concern. I've also worked to advance the rights of gays and lesbians around the country, helping them to achieve the freedom to marry around all 50 states, and helping them to achieve the right to live and work without the fear of being discriminated against just for who they are. Thank you. And so if my family or friends say I'm a little obsessed about politics, I say IB is to blame. But that's a good thing. One of IB's greatest strengths is its emphasis, its dual emphasis is how I experienced it, on both the primary sources as well as being well-rounded, and I still have that picture of the IB hexagon just burned into my brain. I can see as clearly as though it were yesterday that whenever I started in 9th grade, I was a total math nerd. I mean, you pick it. I had braces. I was on the math team itself, that's about as nerdy as it gets. To make sure I checked every box, I also played the bassoon in the school band. That's the nerdiest instrument. But that all started to change once I was in the diploma program. I remember taking a philosophy course before I even had a driver's license. Think about that. It's wild. Throughout my 4 years of high school, I remember reading Marx, but also reading Locke. I remember reading Darwin's On the Origin of Species, but I also remember reading selected passages from the Bible. I remember having to learn how to draw an eyeball and a human knee joint from memory. Where's the biology teachers? That was horrible. But I remember by the time I was done with senior year thinking that the extended essay was actually short. And so then you get to college and your professor's like, you've got to write a 5-page paper. And I'm like, are you for real? 5 pages. But seriously, all of those experiences, including having to draw a human knee joint from memory, they forced me to open my mind and expand my horizons. You deal with all of these primary sources, you debate them for months and months. You layer on top of that the fact that you're required to excel in all of these different subject areas. You're not allowed to just be a math student, which is how I arrived at IB, or an art student, or any other kind of a niche student. You are required to be a complete learner. And so through all this learning, I personally came to understand how integral the government is to our everyday lives, and how importantly I valued certain things. IB demanded that I open my eyes up to this great big world all around us, take that knowledge, and actually do something with it.